Tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
So a kid that wants to buy it can't just grab it off the shelf and take it up to the cashier at the local convenience store.
BC tightens the rules on flavoured nicotine pouches, while others call for more.
I would like to see a complete ban.
Plus, a BC trucking company sues the province to try to overturn its suspension for repeatedly hitting overpasses.
My only hope is that on the way to court, they don't run into a bridge.
And
now I've noticed a huge increase. We're getting rat calls in places we never really got that many before.
is there a boom in the local rat population? We look at the impact of a BC ban on a popular rat poison.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
Hello, I'm Dan Burritt. Thanks for joining us. The BC government says it is time to move flavoured nicotine pouches behind store counters. Starting this week, people will only be available to get them through a pharmacist. The tobacco product hit the shelves last fall after Health Canada approved it with no restrictions on advertising or sales. As Mira Baines explains, some health groups want them banned altogether.
BC is cracking down on the sale of nicotine buccal or mouth pouches. They feature big flavors and brightly colored packaging that critics say are geared towards younger people. The province says the products, including the brand Zonic, will only be available behind pharmacy counters after today.
So a kid that wants to buy it can't just grab it off the shelf and take it up to the cashier at the local convenience store. They have to go to the pharmacy counter. They have to have that engagement with the pharmacist, and that is a barrier, we hope, that will prevent young people from coming into contact with these addictive products.
The pouches are used by placing them under the tongue. Some Surrey schools are finding some minors with the products.
They're using it typically for the sensation that they get from the nicotine.
The province says there are concerns these types of products, which can be addictive, will lead younger people to a lifetime of nicotine dependence. This Vancouver vape shop owner says his store doesn't sell to minors, although the product is becoming popular.
Should be allowed to sell in smoke shop at least. Those are like properly for 9+, and like people are asking for it, especially the youngsters. Like you can age them between 19 to 30.
Back in October, Health Canada approved the pouches produced by cigarette manufacturer Imperial Tobacco under the brand name Zonic as a product to help smokers quit. Imperial Tobacco says it's unfair to limit access.
By removing a product like Zonic out of the convenience store and out of where adult smokers are buying their product, I think a lot of them won't do the trip to pharmacies and maybe they'll continue smoking.
The product doesn't fall under any existing federal or provincial tobacco or vaping legislation because the pouches contain less than 4 milligrams of nicotine and are not inhaled. But how did it get approved in the first place?
The way that this was presented is it was for the purposes of cessation. In their marketing and their approach, it exists in a completely different way. We were duped.
BC's health minister says the federal minister has said he will close that loop.
He is committed to taking action at the federal level.
Half a dozen health groups raised alarm bells when it was approved, but some say this restriction isn't enough.
I would like to see a complete ban, similar to what the Netherlands has done. They banned the sale of nicotine pouches entirely.
But with influencers peddling the pouches to youth, the jury is still out on whether the restrictions will be effective.
Mira Baines reporting. A Langley trucking company suspending for hitting numerous highway overpasses in BC is now suing the provincial government to overturn that suspension. They claim they've lost millions of dollars. Our Jason Proctor broke this story and spoke with our Leanne Young earlier today.
Jason, tell us more about why they're suing and what's prompted all this.
Yeah, so it's a lawsuit, but it's kind of interesting. It kind of highlights this issue which has plagued BC highways in the past couple of years with all these crashes into overpasses. So this company called Chohan Freight Forwarders has been suspended. They've been involved in 6 overpass crashes, the most recent of which happened on December 28th. So they'd actually been suspended before that for 5 and then got back on the road, come up with a safety action plan. But this owner-operator, kind of an independent contractor, according to them, ignored their safety action plan and, acting on his own on the advice of friends, set off with a load that they believed to be too high for this ride, and basically smashed into an overpass on December 28th.
And this was in Delta,
traffic.
right?
Yeah, in Delta. And so they've been suspended ever since. But the interesting thing about this is they're stuck in what they say is kind of a limbo, because they've been issued a notice of suspension, which they can't really appeal. That's just something that happens while an investigation is going on. They've been told their license is going to be cancelled, but they don't know when that notice of cancellation is going to come down, and they can't appeal anything until they get that actual notice of cancellation. So they're basically suing to say either cut the suspension or issue the notice of cancellation so that we can actually move ahead and appeal this.
Right, and then they also have a second company that's also suing.
Well,
very quickly.
Yeah, this is also, I guess, it's a family firm. They have the son of the owner of this company runs what he says is an independent firm out of Alberta, but the ministry has concluded there's really no difference between the two firms, and so they've denied them oversized permits. They're also suing to say, well, there's no connection between us. We're independent, even though we may be owned by the same family. We're independently owned and operated.
Very interesting. So the whole family's been in limbo since. Okay, thanks for that story. Jason Proctor for us.
Premier David Eby, meanwhile, was asked about the lawsuits brought forward by Chohan freight forwarders. He had this to say.
My only hope is that on the way to court, they don't run into a bridge. I encourage them to take the bus or some other form of public transit on the way to the courthouse.
Eby also says he was surprised to hear Chohan was appealing the decision, given they are the worst offender with 6 overpass strikes. A video showing a big group of rats near a bush in downtown Vancouver has been crawling around on social media recently, leading some to wonder if there's been a boom in rat numbers here. It comes after a BC ban on a popular poison. Joel Ballard looks into whether the two are linked.
Rats, dozens of them, hanging out near Burrard Station in Vancouver. On social media platforms like Reddit, people living in the Lower Mainland are posting that rat sightings are all too common and increasing.
That's a lot of rats, but is it more than normal? Well, we're about to go meet up with a pest control expert who's been doing this work since 1996 to find out what he's been seeing.
I met Jay McIntyre at a parking lot in downtown Vancouver, a hotspot for rats.
So what will this look like at nighttime, when the rats are out?
Oh, like a little rat city, rats running around. You can see their travel paths already, so they will go in there to the dumpster where the food is, probably running to that dumpster down the alleyway.
Back in 2022, the province banned a type of rat poison in BC.
What have you noticed just since that ban on second-generation rodenticides came in?
Now I've noticed a huge increase. We're getting rat calls in places we never really got that many before. And usually by the time the clients know it, it's an established population. It's not 1 or 2, we're looking at, 7 or more.
The province banned second-generation rodenticides because it was having some unintended impacts. Other wildlife was dying, like owls. Basically, the rats would ingest the poison, the owls would eat the rats. So is the ban to blame for what some are saying is a boom in the rat population? Let's check with the expert.
Meet Kaylee Byers. She's a rat biologist and an assistant professor in health sciences at SFU. And I asked her whether the ban and anecdotal boom in rat populations is connected.
In science, we have this phrase that sort of correlation doesn't mean causation.
We have the ban and people talking about an increase, but she says that doesn't necessarily mean they're linked.
Whether or not those things are aligned is hard to say because we don't have a way of tracking rat populations over time.
While neither the city of Vancouver or the province track rat populations, the city does track rat-related calls through its 311 number. In 2023, there were 1,174 rat calls. That's compared to 1,245 in 2022 and 1,175 in 2021. But those numbers include all mentions of rats, mice, and other rodents, not just rats. But the city says its rat management plan is focused on exclusion, not extermination, so it hasn't seen an increase in rodent issues. Meanwhile, Byers says the recent weather could also be playing a role.
Mild winters, plenty of food availability, all those things come into play in supporting our rat populations.
Back in the alley with Jay, our hunt for rats in the daytime was a bust. But the nocturnal critters did come out to say hi when some of our brave colleagues ventured out at night.
So we had that ban come in. How did you feel about it coming in, and how are you feeling now, you know, sort of a year, 2 years out?
I'm all for better ways to control problems for the environment and non-target animals. It's a different way of thinking. So we can't use this anymore, and it was sort of easy at a crutch, like, oh, we don't have the poison to deal with these rodents anymore. But we can still control them with traps, exclusion, proper sanitation around garbage bins like we see.
Meanwhile, the province says rodent-proofing your home and cleaning up attractants are the most effective ways to control the furry freeloaders. Joel Ballard, CBC News, Vancouver.
BC's parole board has decided convicted sex offender Randall Hopley will not see any changes to his parole conditions. Hopley was on the run for 10 days in November of last year. Despite this, he will continue to be allowed overnight community leave with the approval of his parole officer. In 2011, Hopley abducted a 3-year-old boy. Premier David Eby is frustrated.
Clearly, there is something that is not working here. Clearly, there is a problem here. And the problem is definitely Randall Hopley, but it is also a system that allows him to continually be released back into our community to put kids at risk. It's not acceptable. I'll be reaching out to federal counterparts about this so that they can address this.
The board says Hopley's release under the supervision order was suspended 4 times since 2019 for breaching conditions. But the board says there's no evidence the breaches were related to his authorization for overnight leave, and no changes were needed to the supervision order. Parts of Vancouver's Gastown will be car-free this summer. The city has approved a pilot project that's meant to bring energy to the historic neighborhood during the busy tourist season. And as Michelle Gomez reports, many businesses are keen for it.
For the months of July and August, only pedestrians will roam these cobblestones. Parts of Water Street will be completely blocked off to cars, allowing businesses to spill out onto the sidewalks. Local businesses are welcoming the news.
I think it'd be great for tourists. It'd be great for the restaurants and the stores. They could do maybe get zoning to extend their patios, get people out on the street, get people walking around.
Yeah, we're such a walkable city. I think that having less vehicles on the road, especially in a place like downtown, like it just makes a lot more sense than having such busy streets.
So many cars here, so people sometimes want to cross here, but the car is sometimes I feel it's dangerous.
The block between Richards and Canby Streets will be car-free, as well as Maple Tree Square. The 2 blocks in between will be car light, meaning only local residents and service vehicles can go through.
Extending the patio so that they're spilling out into the area, having planters, spaces for people to sit. The city would commit to increased cleaning in the area, all to make it continue to feel like it's an inviting and welcoming space.
But one business owner worries it will limit parking space.
They should make it like more parking in Gastown and free parking as well. So I can bring the tourists from anywhere, which is like Surrey, Langley, Maple Ridge, Burnaby.
But another business owner says there's not much parking on Water Street anyways. She doesn't think the project will limit accessibility for those who use mobility aids like herself.
As a wheelchair user, it's not accessible by car now anyway, really. The parking is really nearby. There's parking at Waterfront Station, there's a parkade right behind us, there's parking on Cordova.
City staff will assess the pilot this fall to inform future car-free projects in Vancouver.
So I'm hoping it kind of gives it that street festival vibe that everybody loves. Lots more community, more interaction.
In the meantime, businesses hope a car light street will bring some light to Gastown this summer. Michelle Gomez, CBC News, Vancouver.
A Fraser Health doctor is warning about higher rates of heart disease among South Asians. Dr. Arun Garg directs the South Asian Health Institute. He says patients in his community can face triple the risk of heart problems compared to other racial and ethnic groups.
In 2024, we still don't know the answer why South Asian community has this obviously all these issues are multifactorial. There is the issue of nature and nurture. There is genetics, but also lifestyle.
February is Heart Month, by the way, and new numbers from the Heart and Stroke Foundation show about 60,000 out-of-hospital cardiac arrests happen every year. That's 1 every 9 minutes. Meanwhile, patients from all over BC come to Vancouver for specialized medical procedures like organ transplants. But one Vancouver councillor says he's hearing about a need for more places for out-of-town patients to stay. Green councillor Pete Fry wants city staff to explore incentives like density bonuses or the right to build larger than usual structures for housing development with patient-specific rooms. He's put forward a motion calling for staff to look at how to get these accommodations built.
Nice and simple.
It is still winter, but a popular BC summer air show has already been grounded, partly because of the risk of wildfires. Fort St. John's International Air Show has been scrapped because of a shortage of volunteers and concerns about drought conditions. Organizers say there is a very significant risk of wildfire in the region that would make it hard to hold the show. Provincial officials say Fort St. John is currently suffering some of the worst drought conditions in BC. Darius Madavi joins us now with a first look at the weather. What did we get today and tomorrow?
Oh, not much relief from the drought conditions, I have to say. We were expecting to get some precipitation over the south coast last night into today, but that didn't really materialize. You can see we got some rain for parts of the south coast, but over the last 12 hours, absolutely nothing. That system was very short-lived. Really just got a disturbance that was came off of the system that was sitting off the coast. So we saw a little bit of snow in parts of the southern interior yesterday, but for the most part, that is sort of fading away today, and that is going to be the story for a little bit. We will get a little bit more precipitation on the way. You can see here there will be some snow coming, particularly to parts of the southeast tomorrow, and we get a little bit of precipitation over here on parts of the south coast. But for the most part, it's going to be missing Vancouver. We will get potentially some showers tomorrow, maybe a tiny bit of snow for the local mountains, but for the most part, we're going to be pretty dry. Other parts of the south coast, including parts of the island, we'll get some rain, snow at higher elevations, but it's not going to be all that much. For a significant amount, we're going to be waiting until the weekend. You can see on Saturday, this next system starts to roll down, and that is what's going to be bringing some significant precipitation, more than likely, to Vancouver. So we're looking at Saturday into Sunday as our first next pretty major downpour in terms of, or not even a downpour, but any significant amount of rain, really, and snow for the local mountains, because you can see over the next 48 hours, pretty much nothing coming our way. And so tonight, if we take a look here at the overnight forecast for Vancouver, low chance of showers tonight and snow for the local mountains, but not looking like too much at all.
Okay, we'll check in later, Darius. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
A new police drama from CBC set in Surrey is debuting tonight.
This is the CFBC's largest attachment, home to elite units from federal and municipal scope.
Starring Supinder Rach and Enrico Colanturi, Allegiance focuses on a young Sikh police officer caught between her loyalty to her flag, her badge, and her family.
We dive into a lot of the issues that we are facing in the world today, especially when it comes to policing, and that the system is a little bit broken and that we can do a little bit better.
The CBC's Bill Puri moderated a panel discussion last night in Surrey with the stars, and CBC President and CEO Catherine Tate also made remarks. You can watch Allegiance right here on CBC television. The first episode airs tonight at 9 p.m. or stream it anytime for free on CBC Gem. They're dogs with jobs. We're going to show you a unique canine team that sniffs out diseases at VGH. Stick around. And thanks for joining our commercial-free live stream tonight. The Saskatchewan Ministry of Health is dealing with a serious backlog of children who need autism assessments. And as Jesse Anton reports, the wait is affecting kids in the classroom.
Michelle Kramer says her 7-year-old son's report card should be a clear indicator he needs an autism assessment.
So he has green in all the areas except for the red triangle he has with social skills.
Kramer says she first tried to get him assessed for autism spectrum disorder, or ASD, through Child and Youth Services 5 years ago. It wasn't until early last spring she was put on the wait list. She was told then to expect a call in January of 2025. In the meantime, the single mom is down to part-time hours at work. And that's because she keeps getting calls from her son's school, asking for her to pick him up because he's disrupting his class.
It starts to feel impossible. I'm not living a normal life, and I'm asking for help, not getting it.
The Ministry of Health has confirmed with CBC News as of the end of 2023, there were slightly more than 1,700 kids under 18 waiting for a public ASD assessment. The increasing complex needs of students is a major sticking point in the teachers' labor dispute with the government. The Ministry of Education says a new pilot program in 8 city schools is meant to help, and so is the $20 million it's given divisions to hire staff to respond to classroom complexities. It says this money isn't tied to a medical diagnosis, but some divisions say documentation from a third party, like a doctor, helps determine what extra support is needed. That's what Kramer is looking for.
And this isn't fair to the staff and the admin at his school, because now my son is chewing up all their time, and they have a whole school that they're responsible for.
Shannon Hill is a board-certified behavior analyst in Saskatoon and says Kramer and her son are not alone.
There's just not enough of those people to go around to be able to see these kids, number one. Number two, the cost involved if you have to have someone do a private assessment is onerous. For some people, it's just not going to happen.
Kramer says a $3,000 private ASD assessment is not an option for her, and she worries about the long-term impact of putting it off. Some experts say if kids don't have the supports they need early on, it could lead to higher school dropout rates and lower literacy levels. At this point, Kramer doesn't anticipate that for her son, and she says she sees the effort school staff are making to meet his and her needs.
Because as admin and teachers, they see this, they acknowledge this, they see the impact that it has on families.
Kramer says she'll support teachers when they go on strike because in her eyes, it means they're fighting to help her son. Jesse Anton, CBC News, Regina.
Dogs help us in many ways, and that includes in healthcare settings. Vancouver Coastal Health is a unique canine care team that sniffs out diseases in hospitals. Our science and climate specialist, Darius Madavi, spent the day with some of them.
We're here at Vancouver General Hospital, where we're going to meet a very special team called the Canine Care Team. And here we have Traveler.
So we started 7 years ago with a program that we're looking to see if the dogs can detect environmental reservoirs of Clostridium difficile, C. diff, one of the superbugs. We saw a program in the Netherlands where a dog named Cliff was looking at patients on a unit to identify the patients that had C. diff on the unit. Here we can rapid check patients. We got the fast snap test, but there's no logistical feasible way to search the environment. So the dogs with their super sniffer capabilities fit that bill. So for the dogs, it's a game of association. They learn that if they find what they really like, was a toy or food, they get really good at finding that, and that's a game for them. Once they're good at that, we up the game a little bit and we associate it with whatever our target odor is going to be. For these dogs, it'll be C. diff. When they're good at that game, it's just the C. diff that's out there to find, and the dogs learn, if I find this C. diff that they've hidden, I get what I really want, which is for Anton a tennis ball and for Traveler, turkey. Right now, we're the only hospital in North America running a program like this. We've covered 32 hospitals throughout Canada, but we're centered right in Vancouver.
What are we looking at here?
So this is one of our training hides. It's made by our medical microbiology team down in the lab. There's a polymer plastic tube inside. It's called a GetScent tube, and it's specially created to collect VOCs, so volatile organic compounds, so the things that make things smell. So the little molecules of the C. diff odor get trapped in that tube, and so we're able to present the dog with the true odor of C. diff, but it's safe to train with, so because it's not going to contain any of the spores on it. So really, this is open doors. We're only limited by our imagination as to what now we can use the dogs to detect, especially in a hospital environment. So right now we're looking at what our options might be to further expand to another pathogen or to use them as a different type of tool, a quality assurance tool.
Get it!
Get it!
Yeah, get it!
So when the dog's alert, we have a team that comes with us while we're doing a screening, and part of that team is our housekeeping staff, our environmental services staff, and they immediately take care of whatever the dog's alerted on with cleaning and disinfecting. Lots of people ask if our dogs just live at the hospital or what happens with them. Our dogs live with their partners, their people partners, or some of the dogs who are super busy and crazy, they also live in a kennel setting.
I said, who has cookies? Who has cookies?
Oh. So we partnered during the COVID pandemic, we partnered with Health Canada to do just a proof of concept if we could train dogs to alert us to COVID positive patient samples, and then if we could transfer that knowledge the dogs had learned in the lab setting to a long-term residence facility. And we ran a 6-week pilot project with that. And the dogs, unfortunately, we didn't have any COVID positive patients during that time at the residence, but the dogs were able to transfer their skills, no problem. So really that's just given us a roadmap for what we can do next for a virus or another bacteria.
Oh boy. And our new dog specialist, Darius Madavi, is with us. So most people don't jump at the chance to go to a hospital, but you jumped at this because this is important to you.
Yes, well, I mean, who doesn't love dogs, first of all? So that was a big draw. But it's a really exciting program. I mean, dogs, they're, people's best friend, of course, but they also have a lot of promise for all sorts of healthcare applications. So they've been used to diagnose people with all sorts of different diseases, from cancer to Alzheimer's, and there's a lot of promise there. But also, just in terms of the environment, like, it's not easy to walk around a hospital and swab every surface to try and figure out if there's some sort of disease there. And so having a dog that can walk around themselves and just sniff it out is hugely important for, or at least hugely promising for healthcare.
And speaking of their sniffers, which are so much better than ours comparatively in the animal kingdom, how do they choose the dogs? How does it work like that?
Oh, well, there's any sort of working dog would be really good at this kind of work. Anybody that would be good at herding sheep would also love to be, put their mind to work and sort of scan a hospital. And so the dogs that this program uses are English Springer Spaniels, and then they're training some Cocker Spaniels as well. And I think we have some photos of a few of those dogs. One of them that I got to meet, who was a recent graduate from the program. These are the puppies that are being trained. These are the Cocker Spaniels. One of them is named Kip Kip Kaboom, or Kip for short, and the other is Secret Agent Disco, or just Disco. Anton, I got to meet him, and Artie are their most recent graduates from last summer. Hugely impressive, seeing Anton sniff out the C. diff, which is, again, a major superbug and cause of major problems in hospitals. And you can see all of them together being not just adorable, but, hard at work. So it's a very exciting program, and hopefully we'll see it rolled out to more places.
Dogs with jobs. Darius Madavi, thanks very much.
Thank you.
In the wake of Alberta's proposed gender identity policies for children, Pierre Poilievre says he's now against minors using puberty blockers. More on the implications after the break.
We're very excited for 2 more classes because we need the space. We are restructuring our place that we have equipment and we have material, but I think that the kids, each level needs their own class, and that's going to help to teach our subjects in one class only. We have classes in our library. We have classes in some at other places. In the shop, we have make classes there, and it's going to help restructure our primary and also our high school section. So that's great. We're very excited to see that in place for next year.
2 classes is definitely not enough. It's a temporary solution to a good problem because we are growing and we want to be able to offer trades, and we want to be able to have high school sports here. Right now we only have an elementary sized gym, and while we do very well with what we have, we definitely want to continue to grow. We will hope for a larger expansion hopefully in the near future. We do have many right holders in the community that have the right to come to French first language school, and more families are choosing that for their children and giving them that opportunity that maybe they missed out on.
Yeah, so we had a lot too many students and there wasn't enough classes, so we had to put a lot of the time 2 grades together, like first and second grade together, but now we can really separate them since we have such big numbers now. As before we only had 2 to 6. Like when I arrived in kindergarten, we only had 6 of us, and now there's 14 of them coming, so it's a big change of now and then 2014, which was 10 years ago. We can now put some of the classes for the high school, which will help with, we can make it a bigger, or we can have more classrooms in here so we don't have to go in the library and in our student room and just stuff like that. We don't have to use those as classrooms, and we can use actual classrooms.
Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre says he is against the use of puberty blockers by minors. As JP Tasker explains, his comments come after days of pressure to respond to proposed policy changes in Alberta.
Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre is taking a stand on transgender health care.
Puberty blockers for minors?
Do you agree with that? Do you agree with that?
I think that we should protect children and their ability to make adult decisions when they are adults.
After days of vague answers to reporters' questions on the issue, Poilievre now says he's against medicines for minors that pause puberty, including blockers that stop physical changes like the growth of breasts or facial hair.
Justin Trudeau's again puffing out his chest, trying to divide Canadians and attack parents who are trying to protect their kids.
His comments come a week after Alberta Premier Danielle Smith announced plans to change some policies affecting trans children.
Prematurely encouraging or enabling children to alter their very biology or natural growth,
including placing limits on blockers and hormones used for a gender transition, and requiring parental consent for some name and pronoun changes at school. That's inspired province-wide protests.
What do we want? Trans rights! When do we want them? Now!
Smith says she's trying to protect kids from choices they may regret.
Unfortunately, there isn't long-term evidence about what happens to these kids after transition.
She cited the UK, where there are concerns youth were being rushed onto blockers.
It leads to a world where we're all less safe to be ourselves.
This trans advocate has a message for Poilievre.
We will fight him tooth and nail every step of the way if he creates a culture war on the lives and dignity of trans people.
The Prime Minister also pushed back against Poilievre's position.
Is anchored in ideology and is not about protecting the most vulnerable.
Doctors who treat trans patients say politicians are meddling where they don't belong.
We do not need anybody to impose artificial guidelines or artificial age restrictions. There's nothing medical about this.
Ottawa hasn't ruled out some sort of intervention. A legal challenge is possible, and they could withhold healthcare transfers if Alberta's plan goes ahead. JP Tasker, CBC News, Ottawa.
Hundreds of Alberta students walked out of class today, as we saw, to protest the government's proposed gender policies. The sweeping changes were announced by Premier Smith last week. As Travis McEwen reports, students are protesting to show support for their classmates and send leaders a message.
Just after 10 a.m., students at Strathcona Composite High School walked out of class. It's part of protests against the Alberta government's planned policies around transgender youth. Close to 70 high school students took part.
It's really easy in today's day and age to feel alone and to feel like no one really cares. So we're hoping to show that people do care still.
It's really important to me as a trans person myself to show up and support all the other people who maybe can't, and try to just, I guess, be a voice for those who can't speak up or speak out.
South of the city in Leduc, a bit of a smaller turnout, but a cause close to the high school student who organized this rally.
Because my brother is trans, and I wanted to show him that I care about him, and I care about every single trans person in this province and everywhere, and I wanted to give a voice to the people who can't voice their concerns.
One of the larger turnouts in Edmonton featured a couple hundred students at Victoria School of the Arts. The policy they're opposing includes restrictions on youth changing their names or pronouns at school, and age restrictions for hormone therapy or gender-affirming surgery.
Since the province's gender policies were announced, we've heard a lot from politicians and parents, but for many of the students here, this is their chance to voice their opinion against those policies.
Limiting sexual education is horrendous. It leads to more people getting hurt. Lack of knowledge is like a major killer. If you don't have proper education, all you're doing is opening yourself up to harm.
The policy is really endangering children, I believe, and I think it's so important that we're doing this at school, which is where a lot of the policies are taking place.
I honestly don't know how much of a difference it'll make to Danielle Smith, but I do know that it will make a difference to the people out there who are scared and who are worried right now.
As for Premier Danielle Smith, she defended the proposed policies during a trip to Ottawa this week, saying she spoke to transgender people who expressed concerns of children transitioning at a young age. The policies are expected to be addressed in the legislature in the fall. Travis McEwen, CBC News, Edmonton.
It's a body of water whose name doesn't really inspire much, but Last Chance Lake has all the right stuff for the creation of life, so says scientists. Where it is in BC and why it matters after this.
Not exactly used to this kind of attention, but yeah, it's nice because I think Kavik is a really lovable character. I mean, he's a guy who skirts the law, but I think he has it where it counts. I mean, I put a lot of work into demonstrating who this guy was deep down. Like I think he was raised by some powerful matriarchs. You know, he's not trying to assume any roles or anything like that, or push in any direction trying to change this woman that he loves. He's accepting of who she is, and I think he's a positive role model for any men out there. So I guess it's natural, I suppose, that people would find him interesting and alluring, maybe in a good way. Yeah. Episode 1, you see a whole heck of a lot of me. So I warned my mom. I was like, look, you might want to skip episode. And then, of course, everyone watches this thing and she gets back, how come you didn't warn me? And I was like, I did. I told you multiple times. She was like, oh, maybe I was just too excited to listen to what you were saying. Like, classic mom, thanks. But nonetheless, it's all out there now. So enjoy, world. Yeah, we filmed it all out in Iceland. Truthfully, it wasn't nearly as cold as northern Saskatchewan. It was way colder back home, but it was chilly. It was chilly. There's never been a better time to get into the industry. We're in an Indigenous Renaissance period now. People want to hear our stories. They want authenticity. They're not putting up with, the Italians pretending to be us. Not only do they want to hear our stories, but they want to hear all of our individual stories, all the individual tribes, the groups. We're not a monolith. We're not all the same. I'm very proud of my Cree heritage on both of my Mushroom and Cookham side, and also of where I get my name from, Montgrand. That's Michif. And the nice thing about working with other Indigenous people too, all the heavy lifting is done already, right? We're not sitting there and we're not having to explain all of the BS that has happened in our past. And so it's uplifting because, nobody laughs more than when just a bunch of natives are hanging out, right? So yeah, we had some really great times, and everyone's like a real ally. Jody is awesome. She's incredibly intelligent, really well read. I mean, sharp as a razor, that one. Yeah, and everyone in the production was going out of their way to understand.
A pod of killer whales trapped in sea ice for the past 2 days is reported to have freed itself. More than a dozen orcas were discovered stuck in pack ice off northern Japan. They were crowded together, sharing one opening in the ice, as you can see, about a kilometer from shore. The whales were spotted by fishermen and reported to local officials, who did check in on them. When they returned this morning, the orcas had gone. It's believed they were able to escape as more openings in the ice formed. To another animal now, a loggerhead sea turtle has been rescued after being found suffering from hypothermia near Victoria. Loggerheads are rarely seen in our waters as they prefer much warmer temperatures. The Vancouver Aquarium says the reptile, nicknamed Moira by the staff, had a core temperature of just 8.4 degrees Celsius after being found in Pedder Bay between Victoria and Souk.
The animal was moving very, very slowly, and for much of the time, just kind of hanging in the water, looking very tired, very lethargic.
Staff say Moira is now getting fluid therapy and antibiotics to nurse her back to health as her temperature returns to normal. She'll likely remain in care for up to 8 weeks before she's released. The answers to the origins of life on Earth may lie in a shallow, unassuming lake 150 kilometers northwest of Kamloops. Scientists say Last Chance Lake has all the right ingredients for the formation of early life. Have a look.
Well, while we were looking for phosphate-rich lakes around the world, we came across a master's thesis from the University of Saskatchewan. You know, it's from the mid-1990s, but tucked away in an appendix at the back were some measurements of Last Chance Lake, and it turned out that when we looked at it, it was, okay, well, this is the most phosphate-rich lake in the world, as far as we can tell. Some things are quite different compared to the early Earth. So today we have a very oxygen-rich atmosphere, which of course we're all breathing. The early Earth had essentially no oxygen in the atmosphere. The other thing is that we have a lot of life around. Whenever you go to a lake today, there'll be something living in it. It might be some bacteria, some algae, some very small animals. So it's basically, there are some chemical conditions that are a little bit different, and also the biology, which is ubiquitous.
What attracted us to the lake in terms of our goal of exploring the origin of life is that this high phosphate concentration, and you need a lot of phosphate for some of the central chemical reactions that make the biochemical molecules that are, we think, crucial at the origin of life to emerge from chemistry. And that includes RNA, which is the little sister of DNA. So it's we think that it was very likely the first carrier of genetic information. For the first life would have used RNA. And to make RNA and the building blocks of RNA, there's a group of scientists you could call periodic synthesis chemists who try to explore potential recipes for the origin of life to make these first biomolecules. And they consistently need a lot of phosphate to make the building blocks of RNA, this very crucial molecule for the origin of life.
Last Chance Lake. More like First Chance, Doris Madavi. I hadn't been planning that one anyway, but cool, eh?
It's such a cool story. And I mean, it's not where life originated, but the fact that even we have the conditions here in BC for new life to originate, like here in Last Chance Lake, is just unbelievable. And so the idea of this sort of warm little pond hypothesis comes from Darwin. And of course, you know, Darwin was right about a lot of things, so you should need to at least consider that. There are other theories of where life may have originated, like from hydrothermal vents deep underground where we have this extreme pressure and all the nutrient-rich environment that we need. But the idea of having new life originate right here in BC, just close to Kamloops, is really something else. But you know what else is something else? Not the weather, because it's extremely boring. There is not really much happening across the province because there's a little bit of precipitation coming, as we talked about earlier. We're seeing some of that come down to parts of the south coast. We may see a little bit of snowfall even on some of the mountains on the lower mainland. But for the most part, the big precipitation that we're looking forward to won't be coming until this weekend, Saturday night into Sunday. Seems like when it's going to spread down. So Saturday morning, we see it for the North Island, but not spreading down until later in the day. And then by Sunday, we should have a nice blanket of precipitation across the south coast. So a little bit of snow and rain on the way, shaking us up from what has been a bit of a drier time. I know we got a little bit of rain last night, but it hasn't been too much at all. If we zoom out in terms of temperatures, we are staying constant still for the next few days. We are right around seasonal across most of the province, a little bit warmer than usual still in the southern interior. Over the next few days, temperatures stay relatively constant until we get into the weekend when temperatures start to come up a little bit in the north. And temperatures now quite a bit above average here for at least a couple days before they might start to come back down. But it's a little bit early to say what exactly is going to happen there. But a little bit of a change in the temperatures up north. Now, across the province tomorrow, we do have a little bit more activity, but again, this is all just really a small chance of showers or flurries. We're not looking at too much activity tomorrow, with the exception of parts of the North Island and maybe some parts of the west coast of the island as well, but really just scattered showers, scattered flurries. As a little bit of a disturbance lingers across the more southern parts of the province. If we zoom into Vancouver, you can see that we have not too much happening in the days ahead. We have a low chance of showers again tomorrow, plenty of sun on Friday, and even tomorrow, whenever there isn't showers, there will be plenty of sunshine there as well. When we get into the weekend, things get a little bit cloudier and we get a little bit rainier, but overall, for February, it's not too bad.
Okay, we'll take it. Boring's okay sometimes. Thanks.
Thank you.
Israel has rejected a 4.5-month ceasefire offer by Hamas. The proposal outlines stages for all the Israeli hostages to be released and compromised on Hamas's previous demands for a permanent ceasefire before any truce. But Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says the war would not end until Hamas was destroyed and that total victory was within reach. Hamas's plan stipulated ongoing talks aimed at making the ceasefire permanent, with the last hostages to be released then. It all comes amid concerns an Israeli ground assault is imminent in Rafah, where half of Gaza's population is now crammed at the Egyptian border. 2 bombings have hit Pakistan ahead of tomorrow's national election. 26 people were killed and dozens more wounded. The CBC's Salima Shivji reports on the fear of more violence amid that country's political turmoil.
The eve of an election turned bloody and chaotic. A rush to help victims outside bombed election offices in Pakistan's rest of Balochistan province in the southwest. 2 deadly blasts an hour apart, killing many of the victims instantly. It comes despite a show of force, tens of thousands of army personnel protecting polling stations for an election marred by claims of meddling by Pakistan's powerful military. The campaign has been unusually subdued. For many at this market, just thinking about Thursday's vote is disheartening. This 60-year-old running her sock stand can't bear it. The elections are a farce, she says. They're not fair at all. It's not an election, it's a selection, this shopkeeper says. One party is being punished, the other favored. Punished and jailed on charges he claims are political. Former Prime Minister Imran Khan is barred from running. He released this video recorded before he was arrested, calling on his supporters to still go vote. But his party, Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf, has been targeted in a crackdown that human rights groups and independent observers call disturbing. It's pushed Khan's many supporters to rally differently, quietly, in backyards under the radar, fueling frustration.
There is a hindrance on behalf of the police, on behalf of the administration, because the police is harassing our supporters. and sometimes they are stopping their businesses.
Not so for the other main party. Crowds rush in to hear Nawaz Sharif speak, also a former prime minister 3 times over. Widely seen as the army's preferred candidate and the likely winner. But even here at this boisterous rally, there's a sense of futility. I have no faith in this country, this young woman says. We need new politicians, not familiar faces. Salima Shivji, CBC News, Islamabad.
After the break, ready for Super Bowl Sunday? We hit the streets to hear why the game itself is not often the reason people tune in. Stick around.
Take a look at this. It's a heart, isn't it? But this is actually what a human heart looks like.
Ew.
So how did we get from this to this? And how did the heart become a popular stand-in for love? This is Kane Explains Why We Draw Hearts Like That. One theory about where the shape of the heart icon comes from goes back to ancient times. Ancient Greeks and Romans used a plant called silphium as medicine. Some of its effects were associated with love and physical intimacy, and parts of the plant look a bit like the heart icon we know today. Romans treasured it enough to put the shape of its seed pods on coins. They might have loved it a little bit too much though, because it actually went extinct. The heart shape starts to appear more frequently in medieval European art. Take a look at this image. It's from a 13th century poem, and it's one of the first instances of the heart being used as a metaphor for love. You can see it start to look more and more like the modern day icon, like this little heart, which is found on a tapestry currently hanging in the Louvre in Paris. The heart was also a common symbol in Christianity. In 1516, Martin Luther included the heart in the Luther seal, the symbol of the Lutheran Church. This is a picture of the Sacred Heart of Jesus. The heart became popular in Catholic imagery during the 16th century. At the same time as the heart was being used in religious art, it was also being used for romance. In the 17th century, Valentine's Day began to gain popularity, but it was the Victorians who really made Valentine's Day a big deal, especially when it came to gifts. Hearts were often printed onto cards and other items. As mass-producing objects became easier, the door opened for more objects shaped like and featuring hearts. In the 20th century, the heart icon was cemented as an everyday symbol. From jewelry to candy to cartoons, the heart shape became the go-to way to express love. In 1977, the heart icon gained new meaning when it was included in the I Love New York marketing campaign. It replaced the word for love and became internationally recognizable. Today, the heart icon doesn't just stand for love, but also health, like the American Heart Association's heart checkmark, which indicates heart-healthy foods. Even in video games, the health bar is often depicted as a heart, like in Zelda. One question remains. Does the heart icon have anything to do with the actual human heart? Well, if you believe that the heart shape comes from the silphium plant, then no, it has nothing to do with our biology. But not everyone is so convinced that this shape isn't based on a real heart. A pig's heart looks a bit like it. So we might not know exactly where the heart icon comes from, why we draw it like that, or if it's even based on a human heart at all. But we know that people love it. That's all for Kane Explains. I'm Erin Murphy. See you next time.
Hi, I'm Amy Bell, and here's what's in your CBC Vancouver inbox.
On February 28th, join CBC Vancouver's Benit Brach at the Alumni UBC webinar, Empower Gen Z in the Workplace. The panel will discuss this generation's expectations on work-life balance, values, job market adaptation, and more. And BC Today is the call-in show where British Columbians make their voices heard. And now you can watch it on TV, stream on CBC Gem, and hear it on CBC Radio 1 and CBC Listen.
Hey, I'm Rohith Joseph. Vibin' is the new show all about discovering great new songs and fresh artists from across BC and beyond. Stream Vibin' on CBC Listen.
Two Canadian comedians are bringing a brand new competition series here to CBC tomorrow.
Hosted by Jen Robertson from Schitt's Creek and featuring guest judge Seth Rogen, the Great Canadian Pottery Throwdown taps into a burgeoning national interest. Here's Eli Glasner.
One of the most wild experiences of my life.
Ceramics is having a moment. Is now the star of a new reality show on CBC.
Clay is the biggest diva in the room. It wants to dry awkwardly.
I'm excited to see it. Oh, wow!
Canadian actor Seth Rogen isn't just a judge, he's an artist. What started as a hobby grew into his own line of ceramics. Like many online, he shares videos of his work with views in the millions.
It was really like social media that sort of thrust it into the limelight. I think it kind of relit the romance of ceramics.
Put it like right in the middle.
To investigate, we decided to get our hands dirty.
1, 2, 3. Awesome!
Gabriela Anguello opened her first pottery studio in her kitchen. Now she's giving private lessons to Drake. Post-pandemic, she says clay helps people reconnect.
You are playing with nature. You are like just connected right away with nature. And you're making something artistic.
Ooh, look at that.
I know.
It looks like a thing now. As my blob becomes a bowl, it's easy to see that. What brings people to the wheel is as varied as their creations.
You can't physically look at your phone because your hands are messy, so you're forced to just be in your own head.
Yeah, just kind of entering like a meditative state.
But in Montreal, Garbo Jew learned the life of a potter isn't all it's cracked up to be. Wake me up! To her army of nearly 900,000 followers, she was living the dream.
My first Christmas sale, and I think that month alone I made 3 times my monthly salary at my architecture job.
But she says the rising costs, the high failure rate, and troubleshooting tricky kilns.
You see an error code go on and you're like, okay, well, I guess it's time to play electrician again today, and then you're just trying to, wait for the kiln to cool down and pray that the stuff inside isn't ruined at all.
Led to burnout and her studio closing. She hopes the new wave of interest will help people see the real work that goes into those one-of-a-kind objects. Eli Glasner, CBC News, Toronto.
Cool stuff. So, Super Bowl 58 will be played in Las Vegas on Sunday, but there's more to the event than just the football, if you can believe it.
Everything from the TV ads to the game day food and the halftime show. So how are people in Vancouver feeling about the Super Bowl this year? Are they planning to watch? The CBC's Karis Hogg hit the streets to find out.
The Super Bowl on Sunday is an NFL football game between San Francisco and Kansas City. But for some people in downtown Vancouver, all of that is beside the point. The Super Bowl is on Sunday.
Yeah.
Do you pay attention to football?
No. Not at all. Not really. I'm going to go watch it, but I don't really care. I'm just going for the atmosphere and the beer.
Yeah, so where are you watching it?
Probably Yaletown Brewing.
Okay, so you're going to go with some friends?
Yeah, my husband and his mother's coming in from Toronto, so she's going to come too.
What was the question?
Okay, so what are your plans for the Super Bowl?
I honestly forgot that it was this Sunday, but that is a very good reminder that I need to make some plans because it's a good excuse to have beers.
Do you know who's playing? Do you pay attention to football, NFL?
I only pay attention through my work. So we have a restaurant up here at Park Vancouver, and we're hosting a Super Bowl party. So that's about the extent of it for me.
All right. Do you think this will be Taylor Swift's first Super Bowl win?
Yeah, I have no comment on that. I think it's kind of funny that she's such a big piece of this when it's about sports and not about pop stars, but it is what it is, I guess, in this day and time.
Do you think Taylor Swift will win her first Super Bowl?
There's a chance. Is she in it?
Her boyfriend is.
Yeah.
That's right, her boyfriend is, but what do you think?
I think Taylor Swift should win everything.
Yeah.
Do you know a little bit about the football game on Sunday?
Only a little bit. Enough to know that, you know, it's amazing that Taylor Swift is already going to the Super Bowl in her first year in the NFL.
Okay, that's what I'm wondering. Is Taylor Swift going to win her first Super Bowl this year?
Seems like her year. Yeah, she's already won.
Yeah, she's already won.
100% already won.
And are you going to be watching the game?
That's a maybe.
Absolutely not.
Nope. You think the dogs might have more opinions on this than you? Yeah, I definitely. Edie, come. Edie, come. Here. Edie, here. Can you come here? Edie is a poodle? Is Edie a poodle? Labradoodle. Here, we can. If you know what, if you want to have some. What are the teams? The teams are San Francisco and Kansas City. Oh, okay. All right. How can we do this? We've got 2 treats. So what should we do?
Right is San Francisco.
All right. Which one? If we do this is San Francisco and this is
Kansas City.
Kansas City. All right. Which one, guys? Which one? Oh, I think it's a San Francisco, but I think it might just be geographically closest to her hand, her face. So you think San Francisco's gonna win?
Dog's not putting money on that bet. There we are. You gonna watch?
I don't know if there's a point anymore. I mean, we know the 49ers are going to win. The dog
Okay,
said
but not
it.
even the halftime show.
That I'll watch for.
Okay.
Yeah. You?
Oh, yeah. It'll be fun. Thanks for being with us tonight on CBC Vancouver News at 6. You can watch this newscast on CBC Gem, our free app, as well as on YouTube and our website, cbc.ca/BC.
We'll have your next local news at 11 o'clock, right after the National. See you then.